What happens when composure meets confrontation on live television, when a carefully measured voice collides with a presence that has commanded stages for decades? The lights inside the View burn a little brighter that morning, the air charged with something no one can quite name yet, but everyone feels. If you're drawn to moments like this, raw, unscripted, unforgettable, make sure to subscribe to Live Narratives, hit like, and drop your first impression in the comments, because what unfolds next isn't just an interview. It's something else entirely. The camera glides across the set, catching the familiar semicircle of hosts, their smiles practiced, but not entirely relaxed today. At the center sits Whoopi Goldberg, calm, grounded, her presence as steady as ever. She leans back slightly, hands folded, eyes sharp with curiosity. She has seen it all, or at least she thinks she has. Across from her, poised with unmistakable elegance, is Emily Blunt. She smiles, but it's not the easy, flowing smile the audience expects. There's a flicker behind it, something contained, something guarded. Her posture is perfect, her tone warm as she greets the hosts, but her eyes scan the room like she's preparing for something she can't quite predict. The audience applauds. The kind of applause that fills the studio but fades a second too quickly, as if even they sense that today's conversation might not stay light for long. "Emily, it's so good to have you here," Whoopi begins, her voice smooth, almost soothing. "You've had an incredible year." Emily nods, crossing one leg over the other. "Thank you. It's been busy. In a good way, I suppose." There's a ripple of laughter from the panel, but it doesn't fully land. The timing feels off, like a beat skipped in a familiar rhythm. Joy leans forward, chiming in about Emily's latest project, her words enthusiastic but slightly rushed, as if trying to keep things moving. Emily responds politely, her answers thoughtful, controlled. She's charming, no doubt about it, but there's a subtle tightness creeping into her voice. And Whoopi notices. She always does. "So," Whoopi says, tilting her head ever so slightly, "you've been in the industry a long time now. You've seen how things work, how people talk, how stories get shaped." She pauses, just long enough for the audience to lean in. "Does it ever frustrate you? The way narratives get twisted?" The question hangs in the air like a thread pulled too tight. Emily's smile falters, just for a fraction of a second. Most wouldn't catch it, but the camera does. And Whoopi definitely does. "Well," Emily begins, her voice measured, "I think every actor understands that once something is out there, it's no longer entirely yours. People interpret, they speculate." Her words are calm, but there's a weight beneath them now. Whoopi leans forward slightly, her gaze steady. "But there's a difference between interpretation and misrepresentation, isn't there?" The room shifts. It's subtle. A host glances at another. A producer off camera makes a small hand motion. The audience quiets, sensing the shift in tone. Emily exhales softly, her fingers interlacing in her lap. "Yes," she says, more firmly this time. There is. A pause. A longer one. And then Whoopi asks it, the question that changes everything. "So, when that happens, when you feel misunderstood, do you speak up? Or do you let it go?" The simplicity of the question is deceptive. It's not just about Hollywood anymore. It feels personal. Direct. Emily's eyes flicker, just briefly, toward Whoopi. And in that glance, something unspoken passes between them. Not hostility, not yet, but recognition. Awareness. "I think," Emily says slowly, choosing each word with care, "that there comes a point where silence can be mistaken for agreement." A murmur ripples through the audience. Whoopi's expression doesn't change, but her eyes sharpen. "And are you saying that's happened to you?" Emily tilts her head slightly, her composure still intact. But now there's an edge. "I'm saying it happens to a lot of people." The tension tightens. Joy shifts in her seat, attempting to lighten the mood. "Well, Hollywood is certainly full of opinions, that's for sure." But Whoopi doesn't let it drift away. "Sure," she says, cutting in gently but firmly. "But we're talking about you right now." There it is. The spotlight narrows. Emily's lips press together for a moment. She wasn't expecting this. Not quite like this. Her public persona has always been one of grace under pressure, quick wit, effortless charm. But this feels different. It's not always as simple as speaking up, Emily says finally. Sometimes the environment doesn't exactly encourage it. The words land heavier than she intends. A few audience members shift in their seats. The hosts exchange glances again, this time more openly. Whoopi leans back, folding her hands again, but her voice carries a new weight. What kind of environment are we talking about? And just like that, the conversation teeters on the edge of something much bigger than a routine interview. Emily inhales, her gaze drifting for a split second, just enough to suggest she's weighing something.
Deciding.
An environment, she says slowly, where certain voices are heard more than others, where speaking up can come with consequences. The room goes still. No laughter now. No easy smiles. Just silence. And in that silence, something begins to build. Not explosive. Not yet, but undeniable. Whoopi watches her carefully, her expression unreadable. For a moment, it almost feels like a standoff. Two strong presences, both measured, both aware of the weight of their words. Well, Whoopi says at last, her tone calm but firm, this is a place where voices are heard. A statement, a challenge, an invitation. Emily meets her gaze, and for the first time, her smile disappears completely. I hope so, she replies. And just like that, the tension becomes something real. Something that can't be smoothed over with a quick joke or a commercial break. The cameras keep rolling. The audience holds its breath. Because everyone in that room, and everyone watching at home, can feel it now. This isn't just an interview anymore. Something is about to happen. The silence doesn't break. It stretches. Not the comfortable kind that daytime television is used to, not the kind that invites laughter or a quick pivot to safer ground. This silence lingers, thick and deliberate, as if the entire studio of The View is holding its breath, waiting to see who will move first. Whoopi Goldberg doesn't rush. She never does. She lets the moment breathe, lets the weight of Emily Blunt's words settle into every corner of the room. Her fingers tap once against the table, barely noticeable, but it's enough to signal she's thinking, recalibrating. Emily sits still, composed on the surface, but her shoulders have tightened just slightly. The kind of tension you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. And Whoopi is definitely looking. So, Whoopi says finally, her voice lower now, more deliberate, when you say consequences, that's a strong word. Emily exhales through her nose, almost a quiet laugh, but there's no humor in it. Is it, she replies, her tone light, but her eyes steady. I suppose it depends on your perspective. A few audience members shift again. Someone coughs softly in the back. The usual rhythm of applause signs and cue cards feels distant now, irrelevant. Whoopi tilts her head. Well, from where I'm sitting, words like that carry weight. People at home hear that and think something serious is being implied. Emily nods slowly. Maybe something serious is being implied. That lands. Not loudly. Not explosively. But like a stone dropped into still water. The ripple immediate, spreading. One of the co-hosts leans in, trying to soften the edge. I think what Emily's saying is that the industry can be complicated, she offers, her smile a little too quick. There are pressures. Emily turns slightly toward her, still polite, still measured. It's more than complicated. And now the tension sharpens. Whoopi's gaze doesn't waver. Then help us understand. Because right now, it sounds like you're hinting at something without saying it. There it is again, that gentle but unmistakable push. Not aggressive, but firm enough that backing away would feel like surrender. Emily's fingers tighten together in her lap. For a brief moment, her eyes flick down, then back up. And when she speaks again, her voice is quieter, but stronger. Have you ever been in a situation, she begins, where you know something isn't right, but you also know that saying it out loud might change how people see you? Or how they treat you? The question hangs there, but this time it's different. It's not rhetorical. It's aimed. And for the first time, Whoopi pauses. Just for a second. I think everyone has. Whoopi answers carefully. Emily nods.
Right.
But not Everyone faces the same stakes when they do. A murmur runs through the audience again, more audible this time. The energy is shifting, no longer just tense but charged, like something is building beneath the surface. Whoopi leans forward slightly, her voice steady, but with an edge that wasn't there before. So, what are you saying, Emily? That some people get to speak freely, and others don't. Emily meets her gaze, without hesitation now. I'm saying that some voices are easier to dismiss than others. The words are calm, controlled, but they cut. A co-host lets out a soft wow, under her breath, quickly masked by a small laugh that doesn't quite land. Whoopi's expression tightens, just a fraction. Not anger, not yet, but something closer to challenge. Well, she says, sitting back again, this table has never been about dismissing voices. Emily's lips press into a thin line before she responds. I didn't say it was. Another pause. But perception matters, she adds. And now it's unmistakable. This isn't just a conversation anymore. It's a line being drawn, slowly but surely, across the table. The audience can feel it. The hosts can feel it. Even the crew behind the cameras can feel it. Whoopi exhales, a quiet breath that carries more weight than any raised voice. Perception does matter, she agrees. Which is why clarity matters too. Emily tilts her head slightly, her composure unwavering. Clarity can be uncomfortable. Whoopi's eyes narrow just a touch. So can accusations. The word lands heavier than anything that's been said so far. Accusations. Emily doesn't flinch, but something in her expression shifts. A flicker of something deeper. Frustration? Resolve? Are you hearing an accusation? She asks softly. Whoopi doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she studies Emily, really studies her now. Not as a guest, not as a celebrity, but as someone stepping into a space that's becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. I'm hearing implication, Whoopi says at last. Emily nods once, slowly. Sometimes implication is all people feel safe offering. That does it. The air in the studio changes completely. A few audience members exchange glances. One woman in the front row leans forward, her hands clasped tightly together, eyes darting between the two women like she's watching a match reach its critical point. One of the co-hosts tries again to ease the tension. Maybe we can pivot slightly, talk about your new film, Emily, because... But Emily speaks before she can finish. It's not about the film. The interruption is gentle, polite even, but it's also final. And for the first time, the hosts don't immediately know how to respond. Whoopi's fingers tap against the table again, this time a little more pronounced. She's not used to losing control of the flow, not like this. Then what is it about? She asks, her voice steady but unmistakably firmer now. Emily leans back slightly, mirroring Whoopi's earlier posture. It's subtle, but symbolic. It's about being heard, she says. Not just invited to speak, but actually heard. The words echo, and for a moment no one moves. No one interrupts. Because now, whatever this is, it's no longer simmering beneath the surface. It's out in the open, and it's only getting harder to contain. The moment hangs there, heavy, undeniable, like the air just before a storm finally breaks. No one at the table moves right away. The bright lights of the view suddenly feel harsher, exposing every flicker of emotion, every shift in posture. What started as a measured conversation has now crossed into something far more fragile and far more dangerous. Whoopi Goldberg studies Emily Blunt in silence. Not the casual kind, the kind that listens between words, searching for intent, for meaning, for truth. And for the first time, there's a visible crack in the rhythm she usually controls so effortlessly. Emily, meanwhile, doesn't look away. That's new. Earlier, there had been restraint, calculated pauses, carefully chosen phrasing. But now, something has shifted. The restraint is still there, but it's no longer holding her back, it's holding her steady. You are being heard, Whoopi says finally, her voice calm but edged with something firmer now. Right now. On this platform, with millions of people watching. Emily nods once, acknowledging the point. I am, she says. Right now. A subtle emphasis. Two words that carry more weight than a paragraph. Whoopi catches it instantly. And you're suggesting that's not always the case? She presses. Emily tilts her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. I'm suggesting that being given a seat at the table doesn't always mean you're allowed to speak freely at it. A quiet gasp escapes somewhere in the audience, quickly stifled, but not unnoticed. One of the co-hosts shifts in her chair, clearly uncomfortable now. I think, maybe, we're getting into something broader then. But that's the point, Emily interjects softly. Not loud, not aggressive, but it cuts through. Whoopi leans forward again, her presence sharpening. No, the point, she says, her voice measured but unmistakably more intense, is that this show has always been about open conversation. Different perspectives. That's what we do here. Emily's lips press together briefly before she responds. And I respect that. I do. There's sincerity in her tone, but it's followed by something else. But respect doesn't mean silence. That lands harder than anything before it. The audience feels it. The hosts feel it. Whoopi's expression tightens, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to show that this isn't just a discussion anymore. It's personal. Are you implying, Whoopi begins slowly, that anyone here has asked you to be silent? The question is direct now. No more circling. Emily inhales, the smallest pause before answering. No one has to ask directly. The words fall like a quiet thunderclap. A beat. Then another. And suddenly, the room feels smaller. Whoopi leans back, her hands folding again. But this time, it's not relaxed. It's controlled. Contained. That's a serious statement, she says, her voice steady but carrying a weight that wasn't there before. Emily nods. So, is the reality behind it? A ripple runs through the audience, this time louder, harder to contain. Someone whispers. Someone else shifts forward in their seat, completely locked in now. This is no longer daytime television as usual. This is something else. One of the producers off-camera gestures subtly, likely signaling for a shift, a break, something to pull the conversation back. But no one at the table takes it. Because now, even they can't look away. Whoopi's gaze sharpens, her patience thinning just enough to be felt. Let's be clear, she says. If you have something to say it. Don't dance around it. There it is. The line. The challenge. The invitation or the trap. Emily's eyes flicker for the briefest moment. Not uncertainty, calculation. She knows exactly what this moment is. What it could become. And then she leans forward, matching Whoopi. For the first time. I think, Emily says slowly, her voice quieter now, but more intense than ever, that sometimes conversations are guided in ways that aren't obvious to the audience. The co-host beside Whoopi lets out a soft, nervous laugh. Guided? That's television, though, isn't it? We all. But Emily doesn't look at her. She's looking at Whoopi. Guided, she repeats. And now the word feels heavier. Whoopi doesn't smile. Doesn't deflect. Are you saying this conversation is being guided? She asks. Emily holds her gaze. I'm saying, she replies, that not all questions are neutral. Silence. Pure, unfiltered silence. The kind that hums. Whoopi's jaw tightens just slightly. Questions are meant to explore, she says. That's how dialogue works. Emily nods. And sometimes they're meant to corner. That's it. The shift is complete. The audience reacts, not loudly but audibly. A collective intake of breath, a ripple of disbelief that something this direct is unfolding in real time. One co-host leans back, eyes wide, clearly realizing they've crossed into territory that can't be easily walked back. Whoopi's voice lowers now, more controlled than ever. No one here is trying to corner you. Emily doesn't raise her voice, doesn't change her tone, but her next words land with precision. Intent and impact aren't always the same. Another silence, heavier than the last, because now it's not just about what's being said. It's about what's being felt. Whoopi exhales slowly, her gaze never leaving Emily. So what's the impact then, she asks. And for a moment, just a moment, it looks like Emily might pull back. Like she might soften it, redirect, return to safer ground. But she doesn't. Instead, She sits a little straighter. And for the first time since this began, there's no trace of hesitation left. The impact, Emily says quietly, is that sometimes people leave conversations like this feeling like they were heard when they actually weren't. The words don't echo. They settle. Deep. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. And suddenly, the energy in the room isn't just tense. It's combustible. Because now, there's no pretending this is just a conversation anymore. Now, it's a confrontation. And it's only getting harder to contain. The word heard lingers in the air like a challenge that no one at the table can ignore anymore. It doesn't fade. It doesn't soften. It presses in tight, suffocating, until even the familiar warmth of the view feels cold, clinical, exposed. For a moment, no one speaks. Not the hosts. Not the audience. Even the subtle hum of movement behind the camera seems to stall, like the entire studio is caught in a single suspended second. And at the center of it all, Whoopi Goldberg and Emily Blunt, locked in a stillness that feels less like conversation and more like a standoff neither of them planned, but neither is willing to walk away from. Whoopi's hands rest on the table, fingers interlaced, but there's tension in the grip now. Controlled, deliberate tension. "You're making a very broad claim," she says finally, her voice measured, but carrying a sharper edge than before. "About a space that's built on conversation." Emily doesn't respond immediately. She studies Whoopi for a brief second, really studies her, like she's deciding how far to take this, how much to reveal, how much she's willing to risk. Because now it is a risk. And everyone knows it. "I'm not talking about the idea of the space," Emily says at last, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm talking about what it feels like to be inside it." The distinction lands hard. One of the co-hosts shifts, clearly uneasy. "But that's subjective, isn't it?" she says, attempting to re-anchor the conversation. "Everyone experiences things differently." "Exactly," Emily replies, turning to her briefly. "And some experiences are easier to dismiss because of that." The co-host falters, her smile fading just enough to reveal uncertainty. Whoopi leans forward again, her patience thinning, not explosively, but in a way that's impossible to miss now. "But you're not just describing your experience," Whoopi says. "You're framing it in a way that suggests something intentional. That people are being what? Silenced? Managed?" The word managed hangs in the air like a spark. Emily's gaze returns to Whoopi, steady, unflinching. "I think," she says slowly, "that sometimes conversations are steered in directions that make certain answers more comfortable than others." A quiet murmur ripples through the audience again, stronger this time, less restrained. Because now, the implication is unmistakable. Whoopi doesn't look away. "Comfortable for who?" she asks. Emily doesn't hesitate. "That's the question, isn't it?" A beat. And suddenly the balance shifts again. Not fully, not decisively, but enough. Enough that Whoopi's composure tightens, just a fraction more. "You came here to talk about your work," Whoopi says, her voice firmer now. "To promote something you've put time and effort into. And instead, we're having a conversation where you're implying, without saying outright, that this platform isn't what it claims to be." There it is. Direct. Unfiltered. The audience feels it instantly, a ripple of tension that moves through the room like electricity. Emily inhales slowly, her fingers unclasping for the first time, resting flat against the table. "I didn't plan to say any of this," she admits. And for the first time since this began, there's a flicker of something more vulnerable in her voice. Not weakness, but honesty. She pauses, searching for the words, not because she doesn't have them, but because she knows exactly what they might cost. It just became very clear, very quickly, that this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. The honesty shifts something in the room. The tension doesn't disappear, but it changes shape. Whoopi notices it. Of course she does. "And whose fault is that?" Whoopi asks quietly. Not sharp, not loud, but pointed in a way that lands deeper than any raised voice could. Emily meets her gaze, and for a brief second, there's something like recognition there. Not agreement, but understanding of the weight of the moment. "I don't think it's about fault," Emily says. "I think it's about awareness." Another pause. Longer this time, because now neither of them is just reacting. They're choosing every word, every tone, every look. And the audience can feel it, the shift from spontaneous tension to something more deliberate, more controlled, and somehow even more intense. One of the co-hosts tries again, her voice softer now. Maybe we can take a step back, she suggests. This is clearly an important conversation, but… No, Whoopi says gently but firmly. The co-host stops, because when Whoopi decides to hold a moment, she holds it. We don't step back from conversations, Whoopi continues, her eyes still on Emily. We move through them. And now, it's unmistakable. This isn't just about control anymore. It's about resolution. Emily nods slightly, almost as if she respects that. Almost. Then let's move through it, she says. The air tightens again, because that wasn't deflection. That was acceptance. Whoopi leans in just a fraction more, her voice lower, steadier than it's been since this began. All right, she says. Then to be clear. The words are simple, but they carry the full weight of everything that's built up to this point. No more implication. No more suggestion. Just truth. Emily's heart is pounding. She can feel it now, steady and loud beneath the surface of her composure. This is the moment. The one that defines everything that came before it and everything that comes after. She looks at Whoopi, then briefly at the audience, then back again. And when she speaks, her voice is quiet, but it cuts through everything. I think, she says slowly, that sometimes people come here expecting a conversation, and what they get is a performance. The reaction is immediate, a sharp intake of breath from the audience, a co-host's eyes widening, someone off camera shifting abruptly, because that wasn't subtle, that wasn't implied, that was direct. Whoopi doesn't move, doesn't blink, but something in her expression changes, something deeper than irritation, deeper than frustration, something closer to disbelief. A performance, Whoopi repeats. Not a question, a statement. Emily holds her ground. Yes. Another silence. But this one feels different. Not suspended. Not uncertain. This one feels like the edge of something breaking. Because now, there's no room left to maneuver. No space left to soften. Just two perspectives, both firm, both unyielding, colliding in real time, in front of millions. And everyone in that room knows it. Whatever happens next, there's no going back. For a split second after the word performance leaves Emily Blunt's lips, time seems to fracture. No one breathes. No one moves. The lights of the view glare down like interrogation lamps now, no longer warm, no longer inviting, just exposing everything, every reaction, every flicker of emotion that can't be taken back. And at the center of it, Whoopi Goldberg sits completely still. Too still. Her face doesn't harden. It doesn't explode. It does something far more powerful. It settles into something controlled, something deliberate, something that makes the room feel even smaller than it already does. A performance, Whoopi repeats again, slower this time, like she's testing the weight of each syllable. Across from her, Emily doesn't retreat. She doesn't correct herself. She doesn't soften it. She simply nods. And that nod is louder than anything she said. A sharp exhale escapes from somewhere in the audience. Another voice whispers, "Oh my God," barely audible, but enough to ripple across the room like a shockwave. One of the co-hosts shifts abruptly, clearly torn between stepping in and staying out of it. Her hand lifts slightly off the table, then lowers again. There's no safe way to interrupt this anymore. Whoopi finally leans back. Not in defeat, not in surrender, but in decision. You know, she begins, her voice calm, too calm. People come to this table because they trust that they can have real conversations here. Emily listens, doesn't interrupt. Whoopi continues, her gaze unwavering. They trust that what happens here is honest. Messy sometimes, sure, but honest. A pause. And what you're suggesting, she adds, is that it's something else. Emily tilts her head slightly. I'm suggesting that sometimes it feels like something else. The distinction is subtle, but it's everything. And for the first time since this began, Whoopi lets out a quiet breath that almost sounds like a laugh, but there's no humor in it. Feelings are powerful, Whoopi says, but they're not always facts. The words land clean, precise, a line drawn. Emily absorbs it. For a moment, it looks like she might respond immediately, but she doesn't. She lets it sit, lets the weight of it settle, just like Whoopi had done earlier. And then, neither is perception. Emily replies softly. Another ripple, stronger this time. Because now, the conversation isn't just tense, it's philosophical, personal, and unavoidably public. Whoopi's fingers tap the table once more. This time, the sound is audible, intentional. So, what do you want people to take from this? She asks. From what you're saying right now, in this moment. It's not a trap. It's not even a challenge. It's something else. A final opening. Emily looks out toward the audience now, really looks at them, not as a blur of faces, but as individuals, watching, judging, deciding. Then she looks back at Whoopi. I want people to think, she says simply, to question what they see, even here, especially here. The room reacts instantly, gasps, murmurs, a few scattered claps that die almost as quickly as they begin. Because even the audience doesn't know how to process what they've just witnessed. Whoopi nods slowly, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. Well, she says, her voice steady, people are definitely thinking now. A faint, almost ironic smile touches her lips, but it doesn't reach her eyes. And just like that, something shifts again. Not the tension. That's still there, but the direction. Because the conversation has reached its peak, and now it's beginning to fall, not into resolution, but into consequence. A producer's voice finally cuts through from off-camera. We're going to take a quick break. The words feel abrupt, almost jarring, like waking up from something too intense to process in real time. The cameras begin to pull back. The audience exhales, some loudly, some shakily, some not at all. One co-host leans toward another, whispering urgently. Another stares straight ahead, still processing. And at the center of it all, Whoopi and Emily no longer speaking, just sitting, in silence, as the broadcast fades to commercial. But the moment doesn't end there. It spreads. Within minutes, clips of the exchange begin circulating online. Headlines form almost instantly, some framing Emily as bold, fearless, others calling her comments inappropriate, disrespectful. The divide is immediate. Fierce. On platforms like X, reactions explode. Did Emily Blunt just call The View fake? Whoopi handled that with class. That was the most uncomfortable interview I've ever seen. She said what a lot of people think. The hashtags climb. The clips loop. Every pause, every glance, every word dissected frame by frame. By the afternoon, entertainment outlets pick it up. Panels debate it. Commentators analyze tone, body language, intent. Was it a misunderstanding? A clash of perspectives? Or something deeper, something that exposed a truth people don't usually say out loud? Backstage, sources whisper about tension during the break, about hushed conversations, tight smiles, careful damage control. But none of that is visible to the audience. What they saw is what stays. And what they saw felt real, unfiltered, uncomfortable, unforgettable. By the next day, it's no longer just a moment. It's a story. Clips of Emily Blunt's words continue to circulate, paired with slow zooms, dramatic captions, bold headlines. Meanwhile, supporters of Whoopi Goldberg defend the integrity of the show, praising her composure under pressure. Two narratives, both loud, both convincing. And somewhere in the middle, the truth becomes harder to pin down. Because that's what moments like this do. They don't resolve. They divide. And now it turns to you. What did you see in that moment? Was Emily Blunt exposing something real or creating tension where there didn't need to be any? Was Whoopi Goldberg defending a platform built on honest conversation or protecting something more controlled than it appears? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those moments where every perspective matters. And if you want more stories like this, raw, dramatic, and impossible to ignore, make sure you subscribe to Live Narratives, hit like, and stay tuned. because sometimes the most powerful moments aren't scripted at all.